Stage, please. For those of you who are in the audience, patiently waiting for the board members to return to the first floor from the closed meeting, that we've been actually flipping our schedule all day long. Yet we are flipping it one more time. That we'll do certification of the closed meeting first, and then we'll continue our audit committee discussion. And after that, instead of going to a special services, which is SRNR amendment presentation, we'll go to an elementary master schedule. After that, time permitting, we'll get to special services. I'm still hoping to be able to catch the last 20 minutes of USA versus Ghana World Cup. That's just my goal. Hopeful thinking here. With that, we'll do certification of a closed meeting. In order to comply with the Section 2.2-3712D of the Code of Virginia, it is necessary for the board to certify that since the Fairfax County School Board convened a closed meeting on June 16, 2014, to the best of its members' knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the board during the closed meeting, both by Ms. Evans and seconded by Mr. Velkov. All those in favor, raise your hand. The vote is unanimous, and thank you. Mr. Stork.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a report out for the audit committee, and the purpose of this is to kind of give a little bit of background on what we've been working on. One of the items we've been working on for the audit committee, which is the enterprise risk assessment. And I'm going to, we have, I guess, several people to introduce. First, those of you who may not know, Teresa Weatherman is our auditor, and we have Chris Horton, who is auditor manager, and then Teresa is the head of the auditing area. And then we have two gentlemen from Clifton, Larson, Allen, and I guess it's Mr. Busick, and you're the principal with them, and then Mike Sargent is, and you can introduce yourselves, and if you wouldn't mind, get us going.
All right. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Greg Bussink. I'm a principal with Clifton Larson Allen. We are a national public accounting firm, and we specialize in serving the public sector. With me today is Mike Sargent. He is our Director of Enterprise Risk Services for the firm, and he has overseen the overall enterprise risk assessment project that we are currently wrapping up with Fairfax County Public Schools, and I'm going to let Mike give you an overview of what the process entailed. With that said, so Mike, here you go.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate the chance to talk about the project. I want to spend just a little bit of time going through a few slides to introduce the concept of an enterprise risk assessment, also to talk a little about what some of the potential outcomes might be and next steps. So I've got that behind me. Let's see if I can get this to work properly. Indeed. So one of the reasons that Clifton Larson Allen was retained was to help answer some very basic questions, and these are questions that any organization looks to answer when they do an enterprise risk assessment. It's all about understanding what some of the key risks are, understanding how well you manage those risks, and understanding a lot of the nuances associated with your overall processes. So we have some. I have to turn around here, but. Some of the questions on the board are questions that are very common for organizations to be asking, and things that today I know that was a driver for the initiative to do an enterprise-wide risk assessment, to look at risk across the organization in a variety of categories. Talking about what is the organization's overall appetite for risk, what kind does the organization fully understand what the top risks are, and how well is the organization doing in terms of planning and working around some of those risks. Talking about sustainable processes, what kind of a process can be used going forward for the organization in order to have a process in place that allows this to happen not just as a single snapshot in time, but as something that can take place as a normal course of the business of the school board and the school itself. So how aligned is the organization to make that happen? And that's sort of the sustainable piece of it. Right now, we're working on the initial piece, which is around trying to identify what some key risks are and identify the overall metrics associated, if you will, with those particular risks. So this is the process that we've been using, that we've been going through. There's a lot of steps here. I'll touch on a few of those. Initially, defining the scope of the project, trying to get a handle on what is the set of risks that are out there that Fairfax County Public Schools might be exposed to. Looking at existing information that's already been put together. Also developing some rating criteria around the potential impact and the vulnerability of those risks. So if the risk would occur, what would the impact be on the organization? And we have multiple categories of impact that we'll talk about. And also, how does the school look at their ability to manage that particular risk today? And leads us towards the eventual figuring out what the strategies might be for those going into the future. The middle part of the process is where the majority of the heavy lifting took place, and that is to conduct the interviews with a variety of folks in the school organization, generate a list of potential risk, and go through a process of trying to rate those risks to put some eventual prioritization in place around that. Through a combination of interviews and follow-on and workshops as well. And then to put those risks in place in order to serve as a backbone of coming up with some strategies around the risks that are identified, depending on the level and intensity of the risk that's determined by using the process to do that. And then, of course, coming up with a sustainable process to make this something that can take place in the future as a part of the normal business process. Typical way that risks are shown on a process like this is what's called the risk heat map. This is an example of a risk heat map that uses impact and vulnerability. Impact, as I mentioned, is defined as if the risk were to occur, how bad would it be? It's simply an indication of how serious is that particular risk. There's a lot of different ways to consider impact, and the organization is taking the leading practice here by considering multiple types of impact in the process. Some of them are listed here on the screen in terms of financial, impact on students, impact on operations, impact on employees, legal, regulatory, reputation. So there's a variety of ways in this day and age to consider impact. Impact is not simply a financial measurement anymore, as it might have been 20 years ago. The other criteria that we used in a process like this is vulnerability, and that is when you think about that particular risk, how well does the organization manage that risk today? And that risk can be looked at, and vulnerability has multiple criteria as well. So you have controls, existing mitigation. What kind of controls are in place to make sure that to manage that particular risk? Monitoring and testing. Is there monitoring and testing in place in order to be able to determine the vulnerability and certainly when that risk might occur? And lastly, around people, skills, and knowledge. Does the organization have people in place, skills, people understand that risk and have the knowledge and the training to lower the vulnerability of that particular risk? So it's a multifaceted approach to considering multiple types of impact, considering multiple types of vulnerability, and using a heat map process to give you a graphical representation of what your highest impact, highest vulnerability risk might be. Oops. So this chart's kind of takes us from a current snapshot in time through the future. And this is what I call this chart the Erm Journey. What this chart represents is that as organizations of any kind start to do more and more formalized risk management, they move from a more ad hoc reactionary method, which is kind of on the left-hand side of the chart, up through establishing more defined processes and procedures around risk, developing an enterprise-wide risk register, which is an output of this particular project as well. Management becomes aware of and addresses risks that perhaps they didn't really know about before or didn't fully understand, all the way through the far right-hand side, which is a much more strategic use of risk information through decision-making, used for strategic planning, used for operational budgetary decisions, a variety of things where risk becomes embedded in the day-to-day operations of the organization. So ERM is a journey for most organizations, and just about every organization, in fact. And so in those kind of journeys, this is a journey that's run over time to move up your maturity and your level of expertise around risk management, and also in turn increasing value for not only the organization but for the constituents of the organization as well. One of the things about enterprise risk management is that everybody has a role to play in a process like this. So I've just got a chart here to just introduce some briefly what some of the key roles are. Those roles range from the board members themselves, the board, all the way down through the business units and the internal audit function. I use business units in a generic sense. I know this is an educational organization, but the actual operating units of the organization have a major role to play in risk management. They're the ones that touch that risk every day. They're the ones that are most likely to identify risk, to be able to put strategies in place in order to monitor and report on those risks. And then you have, at the board level and down, you have some key strategy type things like setting the overall risk appetite of the organization, which is just to have a consensus view of how much risk are we willing to take, or what's our ability to take risk in certain areas, knowing that they're not always the same. Sometimes you have to take more risk to get a certain kind of reward. Other types of risk, you won't want to take any risk at all. So the board sets that tone at the top. Executive leadership, executive management sets those policies for risk. They execute and monitor those policies. They serve as the primary point for coordinating all the risk data. You have an ERM function, an internal audit function as well, that's responsible for really the day-to-day execution of the program. So a lot of different folks have a role in this to play, and they'll be part of the sustainable process that's designed as they go forward. And that was my very quick overview of the process. So,
Thank you. I'm going to do a broader thing. Just did any school members have any particular questions that they needed to ask of the process that we followed? Ms. Schultz?
Well, I'm just wondering if you're going to advise, for public record, that we had the closed session about this. Mm-hmm. We've talked about this in depth, and it's likely that
we'll be coming back.
That
yes.
There are questions that we're not going to discuss at this particular time.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. We, as Ms. Schultz just identified, we had a closed session where we're looking at not only the overviews the public saw today, but also some of the detailed analysis, detailed assessments that were made, and the risks that we face and where they fit in terms of the relative importance to address quickly versus ones that we are fairly comfortable with that we can address over the longer term. We had, again, initial presentation with the board today. We're going to get some more board feedback. The audit committee has been the driver for this on behalf of the board, and we will continue to take in some of the feedback from board members, take a look at this, and make some final recommendations to the board about the risk assessment, and even, and maybe more importantly, the process that we'll be working with the superintendent on to ensure that this gets implemented in a proper way. Make sure it's with fidelity, I guess, is the way to summarize that. With that, Ms. McLaughlin, yes.
Are you going to call me Ms. Schultz again?
I didn't.
I guess the first thing I want to say is that as a member of the audit committee, I have really enjoyed this opportunity to participate in the deeper work of going through the information that Clifton Larson has brought to us. And what was most, I think, reassuring to me was to see that the leadership team, as well as the audit committee members, there was some really nice alignment in terms of our understanding of our priorities as a system. And so that gives me a lot of confidence moving forward that when we are viewing the needs of the system and what we've identified as priorities, that's I think a real strength in moving forward. And just the emphasis that the risk assessment is that snapshot in time, and as we move forward on it, the beauty of having our new senior audit manager, Chris Horton, is that he's going to be able to take this and then help us as a system as things change and we need to elevate or thankfully lower where our risks are. So it will be a fluid document, but one that I think will help us as a system to be more strategic and more responsive. And I also wanted to encourage Mr. Horton, if you wanted to add anything, because you joined us recently and you have a lot of experience in your work, if there was anything you wanted to also just about this process, especially since the public is here. But I really am excited about that we took this on as a system.
Mr. Horton, did you have anything? Sure, you're welcome to.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much. A couple of things that I wanted to add, I think that would be helpful, and the board has talked about this as well, is there was opportunity to sort of provide some external validation layer on this, and so CLA has some internal processes in place to do that. It's not just internally generated, there's some external validation, and so that's helpful as well. And then also seeing the outcomes, they're very typical for organizations of size and complexity, and so that's useful. And then seeing the leadership is really embracing that. That's a sign of a healthy and mature organization. So that's very positive and encouraging for me to come into.
Great, thank you. And Ms. Featherman, did you want to? Okay. Any other board members wanted to make comments? First, I appreciate, Ms. McGlaughlin, your comments because I think you did a nice job of bringing together at least what the audit committee has been involved with, as well as what we've observed in working with staff and CLA as well. I think it's come together, and appreciated your additions, Mr. Horton. With that, I thank you all very much. We will, I'm sure, have some further conversations, a couple other items I want to speak with you about, but I, again, appreciate your taking the time to meet with the public and us today. And we will have, I know, some additional follow-up with this that as a board we'll be doing, and we'll be looking to probably further, address that with the public in addition to the work we'll be doing internally on this. So, thank you.
Suppose we will take a just very short 2-minute break. Just don't go anywhere.